he's an admitted communist. Roger Stone writes about that and addresses that in his foreword. You have a man here with John Brennan that approved 4 of the 9/11 hijacker visas. So I think as the material in this book starts to circulate, and certainly as the American people realize how they were defrauded by this individual, that'll open up a bunch of different doors. My hope, of course, regarding 9/11, because John Brennan was chief of staff for George Tenet when those towers were hit and taken down. So any of the foul play here that Building 7, Shorenstein, any of that kind of stuff, I'm hoping. Of course, this is more of a long-term approach, but I'm hoping that the information in this book, and as John Brennan sees that indictment, which is certainly coming, he's got the subpoena, that some of these things get exposed in regards to 9/11 and the global war on terror. So the larger picture at play here is the global war on terror.
Welcome to another Just Informed Talk presents DEFCON Bros podcast. Today, myself and Nick No are joined by a very special guest. He's a podcaster. He's an author. He's a political activist. I forgot. I blanked now on what you just told me. He told me a really cool title too. He'll tell you in a second. But our good friend, author of High Stakes Treason, How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions, Ian Trottier. Ian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Citizen vigilante is the term I recently came up with. So
Citizen vigilante is really cool, and I really regret that I blanked on it, but that's okay. We'll keep going. Ian, you're publishing this book. It's been out, I guess, since July, and you've been shopping this book around Capitol Hill. You've been you've been door knocking and making the effort to go and put this in front of everybody. Tell us about this book, about how John Brennan compromised American security for essentially millions of dollars.
Yeah, just shy of 5 million is the calculation. What you have basically with John Brennan is a cutout of. There's different ways to look at the material in the book. It looks like he was purposely put into the roles that he's had with the CIA because of his political affiliation, which would mean he's an admitted communist. Roger Stone writes about that and addresses that in his foreword. You have a man here with John Brennan that approved 4 of the 9/11 hijacker visas. So I think as the material in this book starts to circulate, and certainly as the American people realize how they were defrauded by this individual, that'll open up a bunch of different doors. My hope, of course, regarding 9/11, because John Brennan was chief of staff for George Tenet when those towers were hit and taken down. So any of the foul play here that Building 7, Shorenstein, any of that kind of stuff, I'm hoping. Of course, this is more of a long-term approach, but I'm hoping that the information in this book, and as John Brennan sees that indictment, which is certainly coming, he's got the subpoena, that some of these things get exposed in regards to 9/11 and the global war on terror. So the larger picture at play here is the global war on terror. But to summarize very, very quickly for viewers to understand what happened here, I recently had a USA Today reporter in dialogue, sent him over a quick synopsis of what was happening, and he shot over to me and he said, basically paraphrase, "You're telling me that John Brennan hid vital national security intel from FBI and CIA so that he could profit financially?" And that's exactly what the allegation is in the book. The subtitle is How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions. He sequestered, used an unwitting NSA analyst that he had power over to hide key information regarding terror activity globally from the American people, from these different agencies, so that stock in an indispensable government contractor, which means they basically had the market monopoly on the database showing where these terrorists were. That is the company formerly known as the Analysis Corporation, which he had served president of, which received congressional funding on the global war on terror, who he illegally held stocks in, as he was a senior advisor for Homeland Security under Obama. That's 2009. We've got the ethics waiver, which is publicly available online. And the other thing important to know, that there's 106 pages of an appendix in this. All of it is public information. Some of it declassified, of course, thanks to Edward Snowden. But we have 100% unclassified documentation. It's all open source information. Some of it's been scrubbed from the internet. Some of it, not much of it. Most of it is available through the Wayback Machine. That's the US archive.org. Most of the information is available still on Wayback Machine, but I've got all the links. I've got all the documentation screenshotted, and it's all put in that 106-page appendix. So basically, my argument here is we've got this guy red-handed. So Jim Jordan and some of these other folks up there on the Hill, they may have him on perjury, and that's fine. I think perjury charge faces 5 years in prison. The guy's 70. They can lock him away for perjury, but there's something much more critical at stake here with high stakes treason, in that you have, in my view, treasonous actions against the American people and NATO ally Norway, which would mean NATO as well. And why I say it classifies as treason is because it happened during the global war on terror. And so that is aiding and abetting an enemy during a time of war, right? And the enemy that he's aiding and abetting are terrorists that enter the United States and were successful in blowing up those homemade bombs during the Boston Marathon bombing, right? So there's three key terror activities that we link Brennan to. That would be the Christmas Day underwear bombing. It's a flight that left Amsterdam and arrived in Detroit. It was the bomb never went off, but that's the one event that Brennan allowed to happen to see that stock value in what was called the Analysis Corporation could increase in value. And we're looking at 2009 is when this allegation starts, at a $50,000 valuation of his stocks, illegally held again in 2009. Running up to that Boston Marathon bombing, just after is when that was sold, or excuse me, the price sold prior to the Boston Marathon bombing. So we're looking at 2013, where the price would have been valued at just shy of 5 million, 4.85. So that's a huge increase in value. And then, of course, we're just showing one of the stocks that he illegally held, because it was caught by this FBI agent that I used as my source. He basically came to me, and I can walk listeners through that, how I was presented with the information. But that's.
So let me pause there. So your FBI agent's an unidentified source, correct?
Yeah. So I was able to actually get him to agree. He agreed to be identified. Initially, he did not want his name involved. He didn't want to be identified. But I had to basically establish my own credibility, right? And say, hey, look, I've got to use something that links me to you. So he'd left the FBI. I think it was in 2000. And he started working private contractor. In 2011, when he was with a private contractor, was when he found this funky business going on with Brennan's ties to Anders Breivik when he successfully killed. It was the Norway bombing, basically, and that's when he submitted a tip to his former employer, the FBI. The FBI totally rejected and scoffed and did nothing with that tip. And it's so much the following morning he shows up to work with a private contractor. They take him in the office. They say, "Did you just submit a tip to the FBI without our approval?" And he says, wait, I didn't know I needed any approval. This is a national security concern. I didn't know I needed any approval. And so he was fired. He was fired for submitting a tip trying to save American lives, basically, right? Trying to tip off, that was NATO, but he was trying to tip off the FBI and his research, he lost his job for that. Then he receives a death threat. The interesting thing about this is he continues working on this information. He continues kind of digging into all this information over the next decade, because I didn't meet him until 2024 in Maryland, at the CPAC in Maryland. That's when I met him. And he presented all this information to me in a form of a binder. And he said, look, nobody will even sit down with me and have a podcast. Biden was in office at that time. And it was essentially the political climate was just not where it needed to be to even begin to try to digest this type of information. I looked through the binder, and I says, John, his name is John. I says, John, you're telling me da 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 da, right? That Brennan held illegally owned stocks and he allowed terror activity to happen so that those stocks could increase in value. And he says, yeah. He says, that's exactly what I'm telling you. The same thing that I just told the USA Today reporter. And I says, well, this is treason. He says, yeah, that's exactly right. I agree with you. This is treason. This is a man that committed very heinous crimes. This is much larger than Watergate. You know, you've got skip a little bit forward here. We've got the Russian collusion, right? And we've got basically Brennan spearheading that Russian collusion because he was, because of the intel, right? He was controlling the intel. So he's working with Hillary Clinton to basically go over to get the Steele dossier, create that hoax that the Russians were, the disinformation. And in fact, let me complete that thought though. So you've got John Brennan spearheading this Russian collusion hoax. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Him lying to Congress, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now what we established with high stakes treason is John Brennan's personal motive, is what I argue. His personal motive to cover up the Russian collusion hoax. And that motive is all those illegal transactions that he has. And we have SEC documentation that show that he's listing this, so the Analysis Corporation changes its name to call the Sotera Defense Solutions. And he's listing that on SEC filing documents when he was supposed to have liquidated this stock. So this is happening. The false financial statements, the false financial disclosure statements, of which are allegations, happened from 2009 to 2017. Right, so that's when he was relieved of his duty. Because once Trump got in office, he let him go out as CIA's director. Right, he got replaced. So 2009 to 2017, that's 8 years. That's 8 years of false official financial disclosure statements that he's making to the American people, the taxpaying people. So what high stakes treason does is it establishes that motive, right? That's my allegation, and this is what I was telling when I was meeting with members of Congress, and I met Marsha Blackburn's office. I met with some other key personnel, staffers, typically legislative directors. Because Congress just got back, they're working again. The government just got reopened. But when I was in D.C. last month, the government was totally shut down. So it was just staffers that were in office. This is what I was telling them. This is what I continue to tell them. I say this is because I continue dialogue with them. I says this establishes motive. So we can get him on perjury. We get him back under oath. We start grilling him on the information in high stakes treason. Then you've got him red-handed because you got the documentations. Right now, the key element in all of this is in regards to showing how he was able to again sequester or hide the intelligence, right? The SIGINT data, which is basically what's coming in, showing the national counterterrorism that you've got a terrorist threat entering the United States. You've got to block him, apprehend him, and he hid that information. Okay. That information that we don't have screenshots of that, right? So I don't present that actual information in the book, but what I do present is the opportunity that Tulsi Gabbard has right now to go to the NSA and get those what are called code word compartments. And this is information that dates this is technology that dates back to the 70s, so it's not new technology. She got the power and the authority right now to open up those code word compartments that would reveal that, yes, John Brennan had knowledge of the terrorists entering the country. He rejected it. He hid it away. Because only he or the creator of the code word compartment would have access to open that. So that means that right now he would have access to open that. So if you get him back under oath and he's rejecting all the claims in high stakes treason, and he rejects that he had access to the compartments. He was rejecting that the Tsarnaev brothers. He had no knowledge of the Tsarnaev brothers entering the country. He had no knowledge of, let's say, Anwar al-Awlaki, who was a known CIA asset. And John Kiriakou's talked about that. He hasn't talked about him being a CIA asset, but John Kiriakou, who's written one of the forwards in the book, he's talked about the information in the book. And Roger Stone, of course, as I mentioned, has written the other forward. There's also another forward written by Brooks Agnew. But if you're talking about Anwar al-Awlaki being a CIA asset, that's a whole other issue. So you get Brennan back under oath, and you're talking about the perjury charges. That's one thing. But you start talking about the allegations in the book. That's a complete other thing, because I've got 106 pages of an appendix. But I know we left in.
Yeah, I think we're jumping all over the place here, and I was able to follow you, and I think our audience will. But I want to kind of back up, right? Because let's go back. So John Brennan comes into the scene at the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center, under Obama under Obama post 9/11, right? And if you go, there's I don't know how far in your research, I don't know how much it took you into his history previous to that, when he was quote unquote a long-haired hippie in Southeast Asia, learning about Islam and how much he loved it and studying the language.
But for more than 3 decades, I have also had the tremendous fortune to travel the world, and as part of that experience, to learn about the goodness and beauty of Islam. Like the president during his childhood years in Jakarta, I came to see Islam, not how it is often misrepresented, but for what it is, how it is practiced every day by well over 1 billion Muslims worldwide, a faith of peace and tolerance and great diversity. وهناك درست عربية في جامعة أمريكية في القاهرة، وهذا في سنة 1975 و 76. وسافرت إلى الأردن وفلسطين والقدس وتونس، وبعد مصر ساكن في الشرق الأوسط تقريبا 6 سنة. And during a 25-year career in government, I was privileged to serve in positions across the Middle East, as a political officer with the State Department and as a CIA station chief in Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, I saw how our Saudi partners fulfilled their duty as custodian of the 2 holy mosques of Mecca and Medina. I marveled at the majesty of the Hajj and the devotion of those who fulfilled their duty as Muslims by making that pilgrimage.
But you're saying that, and I want to clarify, I'm not saying you're saying this, but I'm asking if you're saying that all of these actions that we seem to have seen him participate in, like you said, manipulating the intelligence and not, putting forth the most clear picture, which led to these terrorist incidents happening, like the Tsarnaev brothers, the Boston Marathon bombing. You're saying that this is driven primarily by financial incentive and not ideological, whereas many people would argue that John Brennan's fundamentalist, radicalism comes from that time in which he describes in his own words, traveling through the Southeast Asia, learning to speak Arabic and then converting to Islam. You're saying that that's not, or am I don't want to put words in your mouth. What do you think of that? Have you studied that at all?
Yeah. So what I'm identifying is that crimes were committed, right? And the crimes were the white collar financial crimes. I'm saying that gave him incentive to hide his orchestration of the Russian collusion hoax. So his role in the Russian collusion hoax, my allegation is that the white collar crimes, the financial crimes that he committed, as I allege in high stakes treason, that was his motive to orchestrate the Russian collusion hoax, to work with Clinton. Now, in regards to the theological approach or philosophical approach to politics, which we know this individual is an admitted communist, referencing the Islam teachings or conversions in Indonesia, that type of thing. Those, of course, are not a crime. So what I was opening up with, but I will say, are an enemy. My personal opinion, i.e., Mondavi, AOC, this woman just elected in Seattle. These are not things. These are not philosophical approaches to politics that mix well, that are a good adhering agent to America. My personal belief, I don't believe that.
I know. I was just speaking to motive.
Yeah.
I was just talking to motive because
Okay.
you're saying you're establishing
Yeah.
the motive's financial, right? He's trying to enrich himself. He goes from having a $50,000 stock portfolio to 4.8 or 9 million dollars over a 7-year period or so. So you're saying, but I'm just pointing out that other people would say that the motivation was set before that and before he even landed with Obama in the NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center, and the post 9/11 stuff. But that's how he was elevated was, I mean, you have all these people doing all these crimes, Obama included, and they're saying, we're bringing in our ideological fellows to do this. So that's all I was pointing out. But I want to make sure that we get through this, but I also want to bring Nick in. Nick, what are your thoughts on what we have so far? What are your is there anything you want to ask Ian here real quick?
Oh yeah. Okay. So Ian, this is start to finish, John Brennan as a person, how he started with his family, his mom being a part of the World War II effort, his father being just an Irish. Oh, I don't want to give away too much of your book, but can I talk to you about it and talk about things I've read? Okay. So basically start to finish, John Brennan, he grew up with, back in those days, everybody's parents would tell their kids about what they did in the war and whatever, and they would all share that information together. So like he was all privy to this kind of lifestyle in completely different, in a different way, starting out. And then when he started out in the CIA, he was under State Department cover, right? And he stayed in Jeddah. And one of the most important things that you point out in there is that it was a consulate and not the embassy. So what he was doing there, he was not a station at the CIA station, like he tried to make it characterize it. So he mischaracterized what his role was there. And in that time, he did some stuff there, but he met George Tenet later, right? And under, George Tenet, and I had that guy, John Kiriakou, who's, I think he's Greek technically. He also, George Tenet apparently was Greek, but he, or not, was it Greek or and then he, he wasn't from an island. I don't know. And I guess that they have these internal feuds or whatever. And this is how, I watched an interview with Kiriakou, and he explained that when he was doing a briefing one time, Tenet took off his shoes, right, and then took off his socks and started cutting his toenails during the middle of this briefing. That's how disrespectful. So disrespectful. But so see, there's the thing. When it comes to like the Machiavellian spy stuff, you've got you never go against the master or whatever. And that's what John Brennan played the whole time with Tenet. Do whatever he says. Yes, 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 yes. And then eventually at the end of is this okay if I'm talking about this, or is this giving away too much of your book? I want to talk about the Mujahideen and everything.
Yeah.
All right. So whenever, Afghanistan's happening and all that, you got Jimmy Carter, he sends in, stuff, I think it was only a few months, 6 months before the actual invasion started in Afghanistan. And the Afghanistan has always put off every invader, going all the way back to Alexander the Great. All right. So they pride themselves on being just difficult. Like you can't mess with them. They dig in, you can't find them, they pop up. And then, so this is all going on. And then at the end of that, they just pulled out. And when you pull out and you have all these people that are highly trained assassins, we're talking, and I think your book says tens of thousands of people, right? Tens of thousands of people that are highly trained killers with no money and all these weapons and equipment. What are they going to do? Figure out a way to get what they want with it, right? So that's how you get everything went sideways. But then Of course, the CIA says, oh, now we have to make a way to track these people. We have to make a database and we're going to track them. So guess who gets put in charge of tracking all those people? John Brennan. John Brennan with this, that's how he started out with that company or whatever, right? And he started out doing that and that little thing. And then he starts his own company. And then step by step by step, they usurped all power over all agencies. So we keep seeing the FBI, walk, unable to solve or do anything. It's because immediately in parallel, when the information would come in with John Brennan, right? It would come in with this company, whatever that it was called. What is that organization called?
Analysis Corporation.
Analysis Corporation, now it's Cetera.
And then he got involved with his CT, whatever that.
Is there a question in there anywhere, Nick?
CTC?
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it is. That's my main thing. Is when I want to get to that is because that organization that he got put in charge of, they got George Bush wrote an executive order and they got like God mode access to everything. I thought Chiliad was bad with Ghislaine Maxwell's sister. No. This is why nothing could happen is because they got it in parallel, right? With the FBI, the NSA, CIA, and before any investigations could start, they would grab the information and then classify it and then put it in a compartment and then it's gone and they can't do anything about it. That's why the FBI has been so ineffective, right? At least in this organization still, like you were saying with Tulsi Gabbard, she'd go in there and just it's all there. They just need to go in there and then all the stuff they have is going to show all the crimes they have. And like Ian has said, he can't only speculate about certain stuff because it becomes classified, whatever. But if you go look in there, he's got all of the OSINT stuff on the outside. But if you go, it's pointing all right there. If you go look there, you're going to see that they've basically allowed, as he said, for profit, these people to get the information, squirrel it away, and then let it happen, and then the stock value raises because every time they have an attack, you got the National Counterterrorism Center. And then they keep getting more and more money and more funding, and that's how the whole scheme was done. And John Brennan, quite frankly, was the worst businessman ever because he only made a few million because he's just so bad at it. I mean, he's so stupid.
Yeah, they tried to make billions. They tried to get an SEC filing of like 60,000 to 1 ratio, which would have made him gross amounts of money, and the SEC wouldn't let that happen as the Analysis Corporation. But what you're identifying is very important, which I didn't emphasize a lot. You're talking about, Craig and Nick. What you're talking about is Brennan, and this is kind of where I was opening up, and I think I used the word cookie cutter. I believe the CIA has worked and has been tainted in such a regard that really working against a community like the FBI since its establishment from the OSS, right, post World War II, working against some of these things. We have to question and I think identify, what I think you have identified, that John Brennan was basically identified as a sympathizer, as a Islamic and communist sympathizer. So some of these things that can be used to cover up, right, achieve a larger agenda. If you've been able to infiltrate as a hidden enemy to the United States and control, i.e., the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, from a foreign agenda, right? Let's just identify and say, let's just make a hypothetical here that would be a communist agenda, right? Communism does not conceive itself from the United States and our thinkers. Communism comes from Marx, right? Engels. Communism comes from European. It's not even Chinese. It's not even Russian, right? So if that's an enemy, and we go back to the Red Scares, we go to McCarthyism, and we look at some of these layers that have been hidden and maneuvering in D.C. for decades and decades, and we're seeing it come to fruition by a sympathizer, a guy that's voted under a lie detector, that's voted for communist candidates for president multiple times, and you're allowing that person to kind of grow and develop your overall agenda from the back door, from behind a veil. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Is you can identify now the crimes that were committed, right? So you can catch them red-handed, It's not just lying to Congress. Hey, buddy, slap on the hand. You've lied to Congress. Well, wait a second. Why have you lied to Congress? Oh, you've lied to Congress? Yes, because you're a communist and you're a Muslim, right? But you've also committed very heinous crimes on the American people, right? In regards to the white collar crimes with the illegally held stock, and you have deliberately, therefore, killed Americans so that you could enrich yourself financially, right? So yes,
well,
you are
not
yeah.
to
Definition
mention
of treason.
Framed a president for crimes he never committed to run a coup to cover up for yourself and your criminal cohorts, Obama and the rest, and the Clintons. So you stack it all up, and you're looking at crimes that are, treasonous. And what's the punishment for treason, right? So the question then is, I guess, Ian, with your book coming out, you've been going to Congress, you've been an advocate for getting this. You're saying that this first indictment will open a door, right? It will be the way to get the foot in the door to say this. But my question to you is, and this is just your gut level instinct on this, because a lot of this stuff will happen behind closed doors, is how much of this will be deemed, will it be redacted or blacked out because of the national security implications of it all? I mean, you understand what I'm saying when I put that out there?
Yeah. I guess Patel and Bondi called Boebert in last week to the White House Situation Room. I'm not sure what it was. The setting was, they're trying to get Congress to not approve the bill that would open up the Epstein files. So you have to ask yourself, okay, Donald Trump seems like an upstanding citizen. He's got a great family, great kids, grandkids, built himself an empire off of real estate, hotels, whatever he's done. Seems like a solid guy, right? I briefly kind of met him once, never exchanged any words with him, just kind of a brush encounter. But you have to ask yourself, why wouldn't he want to be transparent in regards to the Epstein files? Well, my personal belief is because there's elements within the GOP. Therefore, there's elements in both parties, Democrats and politics and Republicans. There's Democrats in the GOP. There's elements in the GOP that do not want that information revealed, likely because it would connect them to crimes regarding the Epstein Island, and therefore connecting financial base to Trump. That's the only logical reason thinking that I can think about. But with that said, with Boebert, right, defying that, it looks like those Marjorie Taylor Greene now being attacked by Trump because she's wanting those Epstein files open. Thomas Massie being attacked for different things for going against the grain of Trump, and that was having to do with the Argentinian beef. I think what you're seeing is some of that political base on the Hill that has historically supported Trump. They're kind of pulling back and saying, wait a second, buddy, I think you're taking advice from people you shouldn't be taking advice from, and you need to start representing the will of the American people, which is transparency. That's my personal opinion. So if that happens, then you're going to say, okay, wow, the people that are behind me, that are maybe pulling the string here or pulling the string there, i.e. in the GOP, I'm going to have to face them as a president. You got 3 years left. It's not a whole lot of time. But I'm going to have to face them. I'm going to have to say, look, no, the American people want this revealed, that revealed. What I'm doing from my end. And people, they'll scoff at me and say, oh, this is nothing new. People have been making money on the back end for decades. This is nothing new. Well, hold on a second. No, this is something new. Because now there's a book that's written about it. Now there's an appendix with all the screenshots and photocopies that show the allegations have truth to it. No, this is something totally different. This isn't just all the president's men and Watergate. This isn't just that. This is a crack into the deep state that could change the course of this country, right? Because if you're identifying a communist, an alleged communist, having made this type of heinous crimes, then you're now looking at Mondami. You're looking at his connections to Soros and his connections to some of the foreign money, and you're looking at some of these other kind of what I would say un-American. They haven't committed crimes, so you can't call them traitors, but they're enemies. I don't think communists are. I believe it should be outlawed in this country. Me personally. So that's kind
technically
of
it is, but can't hold office. But yeah.
That's what I'm pushing from, Craig.
Well,
We got to
and
hold
let
this
me just
fire.
let me just rebut on one thing there. I think you're right on every point. I think the similarities between Epstein and Brennan are they're Pandora's box. They open a can of worms that so many people do not want to have open. And I think these people have committed crimes at such a scale and have leveraged themselves into positions in these crimes to the extent that their guilt could mean a systemic breakdown of the entire system, right?
Absolutely.
It could
Yeah.
be structural decay, but
Well, Ian,
cataclysmic and sudden.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't wouldn't the National Counterterrorism Center, like they get all of, we're talking all signal, everything, all coming in there, and they get a copy of it, right? Before anybody else does, then they classify it. So they had to have gotten the information about Epstein. There's without a doubt that they got it and then they classified it, squirreled it away. Without a doubt, logic based, that's what happened. And he was not only aware of it, he protected it. Brennan did. And so when they start questioning about this and this all starts to unravel, Brennan is going to become a key figure in his organization. But Ian goes through the book and he systematically like step by step by step by step how we got here, and you can it's beautiful, and it's going to be really important because it explains John Brennan, how he got the power, who gave it to him, what kind of power they wielded and stuff. And I think that you're right about that, you guys. I think you're both right that as soon as this opens up its Pandora's box and it's all going to be synced together, and you're going to find out that Brennan was probably involved in all this just as as much as anybody else. I think.
Nick, I think that's a really good that you're probably absolutely right. But it's going to kind of piggyback on what Craig was saying. This is once Brennan is exposed, once this criminal, this once this person is exposed for these things, you're going to have a reverberating effect. It's going to echo. It's going to open up this larger scheme and the players that were involved in it and what was hiding. You're not only looking at like 200 people that directly will be affected by this expose at the very least, right? In the nitty gritties of DC politics in the last couple decades, 3 decades, right? That's what I feel. So they are working, and so that would also include some of these historical figures in the GOP. Now the reason I say that again is because I was living in Miami when I started the podcast in 2016. I was living in South Beach, and that year, I believe it was, or 2015, I think just before I started the podcast, I'd gone to Doral, gone to the ballroom where Trump had given a pre-candidacy rally. He did it a couple times. He had protesters, but he wasn't even officially a candidate. And he would say in those rallies, he'd say, "Hey, folks, if I run for president, I'll run as an independent and I'll be self-financed." Well, I was a Ross Perot guy because you got to basically handle, you've got to mix two things, right? You got to mix society and those issues, and you got to mix the financing, right? So it's but it's more of an economic entry. You got to be kind of a financial guy, I think. CEO, you're running a company basically, which I think technically the United States is in all caps, right? So it's a company, but that's what spoke to me because I liked Ross Perot. So that's where I got behind Trump from there as an independent, self-financed. And then a few months later, he joined the GOP. And my first instinct, right, the first thing I thought to myself was, okay, what deal did he make? What deal did he make, right? Is he part of the Great Reset on paper? Is he he was pushing the vaccines. He was pushing Operation Warp Speed, Red Cross, that type of thing. Is he part of the Operation Warp Speed? Therefore, how much can he be trusted? Or if it's that he's simply naive to some of these globalist agenda items, i.e., taking over the United States by implementing communism, breaking it down. I think we can argue for a long time that some of the things the globalists want to do and have been doing to break down the United States, tear it down to its knees. If he's naive to some of those things, then who's he taking his advice from? Who's he taking advice from? And my guess is the GOP came walking along to him, back then, before he was a candidate and says, what conversation did he have? Why did he say, from my perspective, why did he tell me and the other people in attendance those couple times in the ballroom in the Doral, why did he say he'd run as an independent and then he didn't run as an independent? Why did he run in the GOP? That's a question I like to ask him, right? So you're making a really good point, Craig, and this could shatter.
I would like to just respond to a lot of what you said, because I have some reasonable explanations for it all. Pragmatically is the way I approach everything. I look at things from the most pragmatic way I can. So the first thing is, as a Trump supporter, I am not sycophantically yes-manning everything that he brings to the table. I criticize him when he's wrong. I applaud him when he's right. B, pragmatically, he would have never won presidency had he not enjoined himself with the GOP. So whatever backroom deals happen, I am certain that he never compromised himself, given what we saw. The next point would be to COVID. We could go through a whole thing on what happened there. He was a proponent of hydroxychloroquine. He never forced vaccinations. He was blindsided by it. It was one of his weak points. You could make a lot of arguments there. We all were. Nobody was expecting it. And then finally, the last thing I'll say is this. When you become president, this is what happens, I imagine. I've never been president, but I imagine that it goes something like this. You're sat down and you have a team of people from all the different intelligence services and other governmental organizations who give you all of the classified information, who run through the details of all these operations that we have ongoing. You're probably shown, ongoing operations happening in foreign countries that have, implications for national security. You're probably given a huge amount of information, right? Now, you're also probably given, if you ask for it and you search for it and you actually work hard enough, and this is what I think happened to Kash Patel, this is what I think happened to Pam Bondi, this is what I think happened to Dan Bongino. You're saying one thing when you're not in office, but then when you see those files and they say, hey, if we arrest John Brennan, this threatens trade deals that we have. This threatens alliances. This could destabilize the global order. This could lead to nuclear war. This could lead to 1 million people dying in this country because there would be a conflict between these two nations, because Israel had spies embedded and we were, you're given all of that. And then you have to make a choice. It's like a triage center. It's like you're a doctor. You're looking at the battlefield and you're triaging it and saying, okay, well, what am I going to do? Is it worth hanging John Brennan's hide because of what's going to happen? Now, I'm of the opinion, I'm a radical, justice. I want full justice. I don't care, but I do take into consideration there are ramifications for things. And this is what I was saying before. When you leverage yourself in a position, it's like the guy who goes and robs 7-Eleven, he's going to get arrested. The guy who robs the Federal Reserve in 2008, Bear Stearns collapse and AIG, they're going to probably get away with it. I'm pragmatically realistic, although what you've done with this book, I think John Brennan deserves to be put on trial for not just the things you've outlined in your book, but for a lot of other things. And if we are lucky, that will happen. But I'm a man of faith, and I believe that even if they don't face judgment in this life, they will face judgment in the next. I know that. I know that God has judgment for all of us, and we're going to have to face accountability. But Ian, I really appreciate your time. I want to give Nick one more chance if he has anything else, and then we'll probably give you your last word, and then we'll have you on again. Because I feel like we could have like a 2-hour, 3-hour conversation about all of this, right? Because and especially about your book. By the way, folks, just quick plug, and we'll plug it again. High Stakes Treason: How John Brennan Compromised American Security for Millions. Ian Trottier is the author. Make sure you go pick that up. Support him. Support his work. Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a really good book, and like I was saying, it's almost written so that you could take the exact book and then give it to a prosecutor. The prosecutor will look at it, read it, and just go, okay, crime, 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 and they would be like, oh, this is an open shut case. Anyway, with the exception of the National Counterterrorism Center or whatever, that's a whole nother can of worms. that is like a rogue intelligence agency that has to be dismantled. And who knows what's going on over there, combined with USAID and all that. And I appreciate you, Ian. This is good stuff. And I think if enough people get a hold of this book and really read it and get their heads wrapped around it, this whole country is gonna be on the same page when it comes time for justice.
I just hope it's not
Yeah.
like the Marco Polo report where you had an anthology of crimes by Hunter Biden, and then they're like, eh, you know. So we can hope, John Brennan, but with your work, Ian, I'm sure the indictments are coming. And Ian, just anything you have in closing, anything you want to plug, whatever it is, let me know. Or you want to respond to what I said or what Nick said, whatever.
Yeah. Look, the day this came out, July 22nd of July, Steve Bannon called it the most exquisitely timed book release in the history of publishing. Roger Stone, who's go to stonezone.com right now. You can write a review that he published. Great review. But he had me on Stone Zone Radio, and he called it of the most important and shocking, one of the most important and shocking books he's ever read in 50 years in politics. Nick, I think you've called it the most important book ever written.
It is.
It's
going to save this republic, I think. I really do.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to mention, when folks order this, when you order it, do the Audible, you can order online. You can order it from me personally, highstakestreason.com. When folks go through this, you're basically what you're getting is an FBI report. Okay, that's how meticulously detailed, intricate the information in this book is laid out. Because again, you must understand that I received a binder, and I've turned that binder. I went through the binder. I added a few things. You'll get my touches on different subjects and things of that nature in the book. But the nexus of the research was given to me in form of a binder by a former FBI agent. So what you're reading is a collective between he and I. He can't have his name. He would have been my co-author, but he couldn't have his name attached. The FBI would have confiscated it, would have never allowed Post to Press to publish it. He would have had to get approval from the FBI. There's just no way this book would ever be out in the public like it is today if it wasn't for me and him saying, Ian, just take my research, turn it into a book, which is what I've done. Roger Stone's has got the forward. But it reads that detailed as if you are getting basically an FBI report. Okay, now he wasn't working with the FBI when he started compiling the research, and he wasn't working with the FBI when he sat down and did a podcast with me and asked me to help him. But he was still a whistleblower, right? And he'd still lost a contracting job that he'd have in the private industry. John Donovan is his name. I've revealed it. I revealed it in the introduction. And he was actually received an award of commendation from the FBI for his ability to research. So this guy's incredible, and it's really just an honor for me to put myself in a position to be able to receive that information, develop it, have it edited, get it legally vetted, and then get a publisher to publish it. And the publisher's taking a huge risk. At one point in time in the publishing process, the publisher came to me after talking to the lawyer and says, we don't see a way forward with this. So I'd worked on this for almost 2 years to get it to the point where it is right now, with the three of us talking about it. Was not easy at all. And again, it almost hit a brick wall. The publisher almost squashed it.
Can I ask a quick question? Because I forgot to ask this question. This was one of the things I wanted to know because I'm always curious about these things. Nick and I have both experienced a lot of weird stuff over our days. Have you felt any pushback? Has John Brennan reached out to you? Has his team, has his lawyers? Have you heard? I mean, has there been any stuff you've experienced because of your work in this, or what do you? Or I know sometimes people don't want to reveal it, but anything you want to share on that end?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's been no resistance at all so far. The only thing that we're having a difficult time with is I've got a reporter from the Daily Mail that wrote an article on it. I got her on the phone with John Kiriakou. I believe I introduced her to Roger Stone. She talked to my intel source. The editor approved the article, and then their legal team stopped it. So it never got released on the Daily Mail, even though it had been approved by her and her editor. The New York Post, same thing. They've got a reporter on it, but it's squashed. Their story is never released either. Newsmax as well. And I walked into the Newsmax office. I was in New York City for a panel discussion with my literary agent and Gavin McGinnis. And I walked into Newsmax offices in New York. I actually handed a copy to the CEO of Newsmax. Rob Finnerty is a guy that's known about this story, and I've communicated with him over email. But Newsmax has yet to mention it. So in regards to any pushback, it's not yet been elevated to that extra kind of mainstream distribution level. And I have tried to reach out to John Brennan. I've actually tagged him in a bunch of tweets. Yeah, I haven't, the closest I think I've gotten to John Brennan is this guy, Speciale, Thomas Speciale. There's another podcast that I've joined the past couple of weeks, and there was a video that went viral. I think it was last two weeks ago, maybe now, where this guy in the audience at a George Mason panel discussion that Brennan is on, he stands up in the crowd. He starts grilling Brennan on these emails that were released by Gabbard's release, and he's calling him disinformation. He's calling it BS. That's Brennan. And then he gets approached in the after hours by this guy Speciale, and Brennan is pointing his finger, physically touching his chest, almost like physically pushing this guy back. Thomas bought a copy of the book. Been in dialogue with him a little bit. Haven't had a conversation in regards to how he personally receives it. Of course, he's former CIA and NCTC, so he's probably not been trained to think very highly of the FBI anyway. But I haven't had a conversation with him in regards to the material in the book. That's as close as I think I've got to John Brennan. But I haven't gotten any pushback yet. It's gonna be difficult to push back just because of all the documentation that's in the book. It's really gonna be difficult to push back. You got to disprove all that stuff.
The sunlight is the best disinfectant, but it also is transparency is the best way to protect yourself, is to not keep anything hidden. That way, what's the point, right? What's the point of pushing back on a guy who's put it all out there already? There's nothing left to do.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Let me quickly state this. Look, I personally never had, there's a lot of people, Roger Stone, one of them, vehemently opposes John Brennan, like wants him convicted, tried with treason per the Constitution. That would mean death. Okay. That's what the Constitution says. That's Roger Stone saying. Look, me personally, before I had that podcast, before I had to sit down with my intel source, I'd always questioned things. I had always questioned things going on in the CIA, but John Brennan was never a target of mine. He was never a target of mine. The fact that a guy was a sympathizer for Communist Party, the fact that the guy was a sympathizer for Islam, I believe that's kind of his personal, but committing crimes, that's something else. So John Brennan has become a target of mine since I received the binder from the FBI agent. But prior to that, I got to make it very apparent that I've never, and I don't have anything against John Brennan. I don't have anything against him. But what I have against him is if he's committed crimes, he needs to pay for that. He needs to be held accountable for that.
Absolutely. All right. Ian Trottier, highstakestreason.com. High Stakes Treason, how John Brennan compromised American security for millions. Thank you for joining us. I hope everybody goes and gets the book. I hope they support your work. And thanks for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Craig, Nick, thanks. Talk to you soon.
All right. God bless, brother.